Your microwave oven is hiding a Cold War capability the manufacturer never put in the manual. Every brand on your counter, GE, Panasonic, LG, Samsung, Whirlpool, the off-brand unit from the gas station was built around the same shielded chamber. There's a $4.1 billion surge protection industry that depends on you not knowing what that chamber actually is. In the next 9 minutes, I'll show you exactly what your microwave was engineered to block, and exactly how to use it as a $0 emergency shield tonight. Stay with me, because the patent that made this possible was filed by a radar engineer who watched chocolate melt in his pocket in 1945. The box on your counter is not primarily a cooking appliance. It is a Faraday cage with a heating element bolted inside. The Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, requires it to be one. Look up Title 47 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 18. It governs industrial, scientific, and medical equipment that generates radio frequency energy. Your microwave generates 1,000 watts of radiation at 2.45 gigahertz. If even a fraction of that leaked into your kitchen, it would jam your Wi-Fi, your cordless phone, your baby monitor, and your neighbor's garage door opener within a 30-foot radius. The FCC will not allow that. So the manufacturer is legally required to seal that radiation inside a metal mesh enclosure. That enclosure does not care which direction the radiation is moving. It blocks energy going out. It also blocks energy coming in. That is the secret. That is the capability they never advertise. Because advertising it would invite a question the industry does not want to answer. The question is this: if your microwave can shield against 1,000 watts of focused radio energy from the inside, what else can it shield against from the outside? The answer goes back to a specific year and a specific person. Etienne Babé Saint-Chalou. Michael Faraday, the English chemist at the Royal Institution in London, built a 1-2-foot wooden room and coated it in metal foil. He stepped inside with sensitive electroscopes. Then he had his assistants discharge powerful electrostatic generators against the outside walls. The instruments inside registered nothing, zero. Faraday had proven that a conductive enclosure redistributes external electric charges across its surface, canceling the field inside. He published the result in 1844. Every shielded room built since every MRI suite, every electronic warfare lab, every government communications vault at Fort Meade descends directly from that 1,836 experiment. Your microwave is a mass-produced, dishwasher-safe version of Faraday's room. It costs $89 at Walmart. It contains the same physics the National Security Agency uses to protect classified communications. Here's the part the manual never explains. The mesh in the door of your microwave has holes in it. You can see them. You can push a toothpick through them. So how does it block radiation? Wavelength. The microwave radiation inside the oven oscillates at 2.45 gigahertz, which corresponds to a wavelength of about 12.2 centimeters, or just under 5 inches. The holes in the door mesh are roughly 1 millimeter across. A radio wave cannot pass through an opening significantly smaller than its own wavelength. It is like trying to push a beach ball through a window screen. The ball is simply too big. Any electromagnetic pulse from a nearby lightning strike, from a high-voltage transformer failure, from the kind of geomagnetic disturbance the sun produces every 11 years operates at wavelengths far longer than that mesh. The shorter, faster components of a pulse get attenuated by the steel walls. The longer, slower components cannot fit through the door grid. The chamber does not need to be perfect. It needs to be good enough to drop the field strength by 40 to 60 decibels, which is a factor of 10,000 to 1 million. That is enough to save the silicon inside a small electronic device from being cooked by induced current. Here's the detail nobody puts in the owner's manual. Your microwave is rated for shielding effectiveness by the same standards used in military testing. The relevant document is MIL-STD 188125, the Department of Defense specification for high-altitude electromagnetic pulse protection of ground-based facilities. It calls for 80 decibels of attenuation across a broad frequency band. A standard household microwave hits somewhere between 40 and 60 decibels when tested by independent engineers. That is not military grade. It is not a hardened bunker. But it is the difference between a fried circuit and a working radio, and it is sitting on your counter right now, plugged into a wall socket, with a manufacturer's label that says 1,000 watts, and absolutely nothing about the second function. Now think about who profits from your not knowing this. The consumer surge protection and electromagnetic pulse shielding market was valued at approximately $4.1 billion globally in 2023, according to industry reports from Grandview Research and Mordor Intelligence. That market sells you Faraday bags at $40 each. It sells you shielded backpacks at $189. It sells you steel ammo cans lined with copper mesh for $75. There is an entire premium segment selling pre-built Faraday cabinets for $1,200 to $3,000, marketed primarily to homeowners worried about grid failure, solar storms, or worse. Every one of those products does exactly what the metal box on your counter already does. The industry depends on a structural information gap. The gap is this: the FCC regulates your microwave for outgoing radiation only. There is no consumer-facing standard, no UL rating, no manufacturer disclosure that tells you the same shielding works in reverse. So the surge protection industry sells you the reverse function as a separate product. The hardware is identical. The marketing is what cost you $40. Here is the procedure. You can stage your microwave as an emergency shield tonight, with $0 spent and roughly 4 minutes of work. Step 1. Unplug the microwave from the wall. This is critical. A microwave that is plugged in is connected to the outside world through its power cord, which acts as an antenna and defeats the shielding entirely. Pull the plug, coil the cord, and tuck it inside the chamber so it does not dangle. Step 2. Wrap the device you want to protect: a backup phone, a hand crank emergency radio, a USB drive with copies of your identification and insurance documents, a spare car key fob in 2 layers. The first layer is anti-static material. A zip-top freezer bag works. A piece of bubble wrap works. This layer prevents the device from touching the metal walls directly, which can create a conduction path. The second layer is aluminum foil. Standard kitchen foil from the grocery store, about $3 a roll. Wrap tightly, 3 full passes. No gaps. Step 3. Place the wrapped device inside the microwave. Close the door firmly. Verify the door seal is clean and the latch fully engages. Step 4. If you have any concern about a major event, place the entire microwave inside a second layer of shielding. A galvanized steel trash can with a tight lid works, and one costs about $25 at any hardware store. This nested configuration is called a double shielded enclosure, and it is the same architecture used in the Air Force Research Laboratory's small-scale electromagnetic pulse test facilities. Now verify it yourself, right now, without buying anything. Take your cell phone, place it inside your microwave, close the door. Make sure the oven is unplugged so there is no risk of accidental activation. Walk to another room and call your cell phone from a landline or another mobile phone. Listen carefully. In the majority of modern microwaves, the call will fail to connect, or it will go straight to voicemail without ringing the device inside. The cellular signal, which operates between 600 MHz and 3.5 GHz, cannot penetrate the chamber strongly enough to register with the phone's antenna. If the call rings through faintly, your door seal is degraded and the unit needs cleaning around the gasket, but the chamber itself is still working at reduced effectiveness. This is the same test communications engineers use to spot check shielded rooms. You just performed a professional verification with equipment you already own. No purchase required, no expert needed. Here's the part that changes the cost calculation completely. The Faraday bags that range from $30 to $80 at outdoor stores and online retailers are advertised as offering 60 to 80 decibels of shielding. Independent laboratory testing published in the IEEE Transactions on Electromagnetic Compatibility has shown that consumer-grade Faraday bags frequently underperform their marketing specifications, with measured attenuation as low as 30 decibels once the bag has been opened and closed a few dozen times. The fold-over seal degrades with use. The metallic fabric develops micro-tears. Your microwave does not have a fold-over seal. It has a hinged door with a continuous gasket, a quarter-wave choke designed specifically to trap radiation at exactly the frequency band that overlaps with most electromagnetic pulse threat profiles. The appliance on your counter, properly used, outperforms most of what is sold as dedicated electromagnetic pulse protection at the consumer level. The industry is selling you a downgraded version of what you already own. Here's where the history gets strange. The man who filed the patent that made your microwave possible was named Percy Spencer. He was a self-taught engineer at Raytheon, working on magnetrons for military radar systems during the Second World War. In 1945, while standing in front of an active radar tube at the Raytheon plant in Waltham, Massachusetts, he noticed that a chocolate bar in his pocket had melted. He understood immediately what had happened. The magnetron was generating microwave radiation, and that radiation was depositing energy into water and fat molecules in the candy. He filed U.S. Patent 2,495,427 on October 8, 1945. The patent was titled Method of Treating Foodstuffs. Raytheon's first commercial unit, the Radarange, was released in 1947. It stood nearly 6 feet tall, weighed 750 pounds, was water-cooled, and cost $5,000, roughly $70,000 in today's money. It was sold exclusively to commercial kitchens, ocean liners, and military installations. The magnetron at the heart of that machine was the exact same component developed at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Radiation Laboratory between 1945 for the Allied radar program. The radar that detected German bombers over the English Channel. The radar that won the Battle of Britain. That is what is on your kitchen counter. A repackaged piece of World War II electronic warfare technology, miniaturized, mass-produced, and sold to you as a way to reheat coffee. Here's the piece of this that belongs in a different conversation entirely. In 1962, the United States detonated a 1.4 megaton nuclear device 250 miles above Johnston Atoll in the Pacific. The test was called Starfish Prime. The electromagnetic pulse from that detonation knocked out streetlights in Honolulu, 900 miles away. It damaged satellites in low Earth orbit. It set off burglar alarms across the Hawaiian Islands. The Department of Defense studied the results for decades. The classified reports were partially declassified beginning in the 1980s and are available through the Defense Technical Information Center. One of the conclusions was that small consumer electronics, when fully enclosed in a grounded metal chamber, survived the pulse with no measurable damage. The chambers used in those follow-up tests were not custom builds. Some of them were modified commercial appliances. The principle was already understood. The hardware was already mass-produced. The only thing still missing today was a consumer telling the consumer what they already own. The microwave was never just a microwave. It was always a descendant of the radar room that detected enemy aircraft. It has always shared the same physics as the shielded vaults that protect government communications. The label on the front says 1,000 watts. The label does not say 1,945. The total cost of converting your microwave into a working emergency shield is $0. 4 minutes, or $25 if you add a galvanized trash can for nested protection. The object on your counter has always been more than the marketing department admitted, and you have owned a piece of the Allied radar program without knowing it. Share this with someone who has lost electronics to a lightning strike or a transformer failure, because they already understand what the manual leaves out. Take care of the things you already have. They are usually built better than you were told. There is one more chapter to this story that the manual will never print. It concerns a man named Percy Spencer, the self-taught engineer at Raytheon, who, in the autumn of 1945, was standing in front of an active magnetron tube when he noticed the peanut cluster bar in his pocket had melted into a sticky pulp. Spencer had only a grammar school education. He had been orphaned at 18 months old and taught himself electronics by reading library books while working at a paper mill in Maine. By 1945, he held more than 300 patents and was the head of the power tube division at Raytheon, the company that had manufactured roughly 80% of all magnetrons used by the Allies during the war. The peanut bar incident, which has been retold so many times it sounds like a fable, was followed by a deliberate experiment the next morning. Spencer sent an office boy out to buy a bag of unpopped corn kernels. He held the bag near the magnetron. The kernels popped across the laboratory floor. The day after that, he tried an egg. The egg exploded in the face of a curious colleague. By October of 1945, Raytheon had filed U.S. Patent 2,495,429 for a method of treating foodstuffs, and the first commercial unit, the Radarange, was sold in 1947 for around $3,000, weighed 750 pounds, and stood nearly 6 feet tall. It was water-cooled. It was installed in restaurants, ocean liners, and railroad dining cars. It was, in every measurable way, a piece of military hardware repurposed for civilian kitchens. And the engineers who built it knew exactly what kind of cavity they were constructing. That history matters because it explains why the shielding tolerances on a microwave oven are so unusually tight compared to almost any other appliance in your home. The Federal Communications Commission and the Food and Drug Administration jointly regulate microwave leakage under 21 CFR 1030.1, and the legal limit is 5 milliwatts per square centimeter, measured 5 centimeters from the surface. That is a stricter electromagnetic seal than the cabinet on your television, your laptop, your router, or your refrigerator. the gasket around the door, the quarter-wave choke built into the door frame, the perforated metal screen with holes precisely smaller than the 12.2 centimeter wavelength of 2.45 gigahertz radiation. All of these features exist. Regulators in the 1970s, after a series of public scares about radiation leakage, demanded a chamber that could contain energy levels far exceeding anything. A solar flare or a distant nuclear detonation would deposit on a small object. The chamber on your counter was not designed to be barely adequate. It was designed with a safety margin, and that margin is what gives it usefulness in the opposite direction, keeping energy out instead of in. Consider the consequences of not knowing this. In March of 1989, a geomagnetic storm caused by a coronal mass ejection from the sun struck the Hydro-Quebec power grid in Canada. Within 90 seconds, the entire grid collapsed. 6 million people lost power for 9 hours. Transformers worth tens of millions of dollars were destroyed. Personal electronics in homes across Quebec and the northeastern United States suffered surges that fried modems, televisions, and early personal computers. A 1989-era home computer cost roughly $2,000 in then-current money, the equivalent of nearly $5,000 today. Families lost irreplaceable data, business records, photographs stored on floppy disks. Almost every one of those households had, sitting on a kitchen counter, an appliance capable of protecting at least one critical device, and not one of them was told. The information existed. Civil defense pamphlets from the 1960s had described Faraday cage principles in plain English. The Oak Ridge reports were declassified. The physics had been taught in every undergraduate electrical engineering course for 50 years. And still, the gap between what was known and what was shared remained as wide as it had been in 1945.